Hey guys, I'm John Barklow, and today I want to talk to you about improvised shelters. And so as the name implies, an improvised shelter is something that you're going to craft or find if you're caught away from your pack. Say you went after a herd of elk and you dropped your pack and then you couldn't find your pack and it's dark, or you don't make it back to camp, or you don't make it back to the trailhead. And so understanding that shelter is our number one consideration, and just assuming you're going to have a technical clothing system on, we want to build something that we can get in and kind of bunker ourselves from whatever the elements may be. Now, there's lots of considerations and lots of different kinds of improvised shelters. You can build something called an A-frame, which is really easy for one or two people to kind of construct with maybe a down log that's fallen and not landed on the ground. You could build something like a lean-to, which is what I have behind me, but it's really going to depend on your environment. So as example, in the middle of winter, it may be digging a snow trench and putting skis or snowshoes and pine boughs over top and just kind of hunkering into the snow. In a desert environment, it may be getting out of the sun, and that could be in a cave or some kind of rock overhang. It's really going to depend on the environment you're in, that time of year, and really, are you mobile? So are you hurt and that's what's causing you to be away from camp? Can you move around, or you have to build an improvised shelter right where you kind of sit or stand? So that's one consideration. Another one is you want to do as little work as possible. So you want to conserve your energy. If you're caught away from your pack, maybe you don't have water readily available. Maybe you left your possibles pouch, which I never recommend doing, in your pack, or maybe you left it in the tent that day and you don't have some food items. So you want to conserve your energy. So trying to find something that Mother Nature has already crafted. Again, a log that's fallen, not completely hit the ground, you can use that as a roof beam and start laying some dead vegetation against it to start to create a shelter. Or maybe it's a snowdrift that's already created and all you have to do is kind of tunnel into it. Or like I mentioned previously, maybe you find an in-cut in a dry wash that you don't think is going to flood, but just up high enough with the sun at your back that you can get in and kind of hunker down out of the elements in that desert environment. These are things you want to consider. The other thing you want to consider before you construct that shelter, if you have that opportunity, is I'm going to be out here overnight, it's cold, how am I going to heat that shelter? Do I have the ability to start a fire? You want to figure out, okay, I'm going to put my fire here because the shelter's going to be here. I can do that. I can still egress in and out if I build the fire. A lot of times I've seen people have a beautiful shelter and the only place they can build their fire is the only way they can get in and out of that shelter, and they kind of trap themselves in, and that's never a good thing. The other thing is, how many people do you have? And is that fire going to warm the shelter? Different shelters are easier to heat than others. A lean-to is easier to heat than, say, a A-frame. And maybe in the snow, you're not going to have any ability to light a fire. The other thing is, if you have the opportunity, you want to try to create an improvised shelter, not in a really tight stand of trees and kind of hide yourself, which seems intuitive, and maybe that's the only thing you can do because that's the only shelter you can find. But ideally, if you can have a shelter that's not completely hidden, because the assumption is that you've called your buddies, you've contacted them on an inReach or via cell phone and said, hey, here's my grid, here's my pin, come get me, and they're gonna come in the next day. Or maybe you've had to call for a professional SAR asset, but nonetheless, if you're hidden, it's gonna make those assets harder to find you. And they may come by or fly over when you're sleeping. Or if your medical condition is such, you may be passed out. So it's easy to use either your signal panel from your possibles pouch, or if you're rifle hunting, a blaze orange vest, and mark your location. Make it easy for these assets to come find you. Don't play a game of hide and seek. I think it's great to get out and practice building these improvised shelters. Go out with your hunting partner, build a shelter each, spend the night, kind of, rough it and go through these skills. It's going to build a lot of confidence. And so if you find yourself in that situation, you're not going to panic. You're not going to start to make poor decisions that can lead to a bad outcome. You're just going to say, hey, here's what I've got. I'm going to incorporate my kit into this improvised shelter. I'm going to ride out the night. my buddies are gonna come get me, or in the daylight, I'm gonna be able to, hobble back to camp, whatever the case may be. But I think if you go out, practice, have some fun, build some improvised shelters, you're gonna be a better, well-rounded outdoorsman.